My name is Margaret Maggie Thompson, and at 68 years old, I'm sitting alone in this auditorium filled with young faces, waiting for my name to be called. The spring air in Denver, Colorado, carries the scent of blooming lilacs through the open windows of the University Hall. Around me, families cluster together, proud parents holding bouquets, grandparents with cameras ready, siblings cheering. But my section? Empty. I smooth down my black graduation gown, feeling the weight of the moment. After 20 years of night classes, weekend study sessions, and countless sacrifices, I'm finally graduating with my bachelor's degree in social work. The very degree my late mother always dreamed I'd pursue before life got in the way. The journey to this moment hasn't been easy. I remember those first terrifying nights in class, surrounded by students young enough to be my grandchildren. The professors who looked surprised when I asked thoughtful questions. The group projects where teammates initially dismissed my contributions, only to later realize that 4 decades of life experience brought perspectives they'd never considered. There were nights I wanted to quit. When Jim mocked my textbooks scattered across our kitchen table. When my arthritis made typing papers nearly impossible. When younger classmates rolled their eyes at my outdated references, not understanding that experience and wisdom aren't obsolete, they're invaluable. Margaret Thompson, the dean's voice echoes through the microphone. I rise slowly, my arthritis, protesting after sitting for 2 hours. The walk across that stage feels eternal. Behind me, I hear whispers and a few scattered chuckles. "Look at the old lady," someone mutters. "What's she even going to do with that degree at her age?" Another voice adds, "Probably just wants something to do in retirement." My husband Jim promised he'd be here. So did my 3 children, Michael, Sarah, and David. But as I accept my diploma and look out into the sea of faces, searching desperately for familiar ones, I find nothing. Just empty seats where my family should be. The photographer snaps my picture, me alone, holding my diploma with a forced smile that doesn't reach my eyes. 20 years of working double shifts as a diner waitress to pay for these classes. 20 years of being told I was too old to dream. And this is my moment of triumph. Alone. But as I walk back to my seat, something inside me shifts. The whispers and laughter don't sting as much anymore. Because I know something these people don't. This is just the beginning of my story, not the end. This diploma isn't a consolation prize for an old woman's delusions. It's a weapon for the battles I'm about to fight. Want to know what happens next? Comment below and tell us where you're watching from. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe for the continuation of Maggie's incredible journey. Driving home to our modest ranch house in Aurora, I replay the ceremony in my mind. The radio plays oldies from the 70s, but I barely hear them. My phone sits silent in the passenger seat. No congratulatory calls, no text messages asking how it went. Nothing. The streets of our neighborhood look different somehow, as if I'm seeing them through new eyes. Houses where I've lived for 30 years suddenly seem smaller, more confining. The American flags hanging from porches, the manicured lawns, the predictable suburban routine, it all feels like a life I've outgrown without realizing it. I pull into our driveway and notice Jim's truck isn't there. Inside, the house feels hollow. A note on the kitchen counter catches my eye. "Gone fishing with the boys. Didn't think your thing would take this long. There's leftover meatloaf in the fridge. Jim, your thing?" 20 years of sacrifice reduced to your thing. I sit at our worn kitchen table, still wearing my graduation gown, and stare at my diploma. The gold seal catches the afternoon light streaming through our faded curtains. Bachelor of Social Work, summa cum laude. At 68, I'm not just a graduate, I'm valedictorian of my program. The house around me tells the story of a life lived for others. Wedding photos where I'm always slightly in the background. Children's artwork from decades ago. still taped to the refrigerator, though those children are now in their 40s. Furniture we bought together, but that reflects only Jim's preferences. Even the books on our shelves are his. Fishing magazines, war histories, nothing that speaks to my interests or dreams. The phone finally rings. It's my daughter Sarah calling. From Phoenix. "Mom, how did your graduation go?" she asks, but her tone suggests she's multitasking. I can hear cartoons playing in the background, her own children demanding attention. "It was meaningful," I say carefully. "That's nice. Listen, I'm sorry I couldn't make it. Jackson had soccer playoffs, and you know how crazy weekends get. Maybe you can send us some pictures." She pauses, then adds almost as an afterthought, "So what happens now? You're not actually planning to work, are you?" The question stings, because it reveals how little my own daughter understands about my motivations. This wasn't a hobby or a way to fill empty hours. This was about reclaiming a piece of myself I'd lost decades ago. After she hangs up, I sit in the growing darkness, not bothering to turn on lights. 43 years of marriage, 3 children, a lifetime of putting everyone else's needs first. And this is what I have to show for it. But then I remember something my social work professor, Dr. Rodriguez, said last week. Sometimes the most important work begins when we think our story is ending. I reach for my laptop and open my email. There it is, the message I've been too scared to acknowledge. An internship opportunity at Denver Rescue Mission, working with homeless women over 50. They specifically requested me after seeing my final project on late life transitions. My finger hovers over the reply button. This could change everything. Monday. Morning, I walk through the doors of Denver Rescue Mission wearing my best professional outfit, a navy blazer I bought at Goodwill and pressed carefully the night before. The building buzzes with activity. Volunteers sorting donations, staff members discussing case files, and women of all ages seeking help, shelter, and hope. The mission occupies a converted warehouse in Denver's Five Points neighborhood, an area that's seen decades of urban decay followed by recent gentrification. The contrast isn't lost on me. Much like the women we serve, this neighborhood has been written off, overlooked, and is now fighting for recognition and respect. "You must be Margaret," says Director Lisa Chen, extending her hand. She's younger than my daughter Sarah, probably in her early 30s, but her eyes hold the kind of wisdom that comes from witnessing human resilience daily. "Dr. Rodriguez spoke very highly of you. We're excited to have someone with your combination of life experience and fresh academic perspective." She leads me through the facility, explaining their programs. The building is clean, but clearly operates on a shoestring budget. Donated furniture fills common areas where women gather, some reading, others sharing quiet conversations over coffee served in mismatched mugs. What strikes me isn't just the need I see, but the resilience. Women in their 50s, 60s, and beyond, starting over after divorce, job loss, domestic violence, or simply life circumstances that left them with nowhere to go. "Your primary focus will be our second chapter program," Lisa explains as we pass. "A classroom where a group of women practice interview skills. We work with women over 45 who are rebuilding their lives. Many feel invisible, like society has written them off. Sound familiar?" I nod, thinking of my empty graduation ceremony, but also of the dismissive comments I've endured for years about being too old for education, dreams, or meaningful work. My first client is Rosa, 54, recently divorced after 30 years of marriage. She sits across from me in our small counseling room, her hands trembling as she speaks. Her story is heartbreakingly common. A husband who controlled the finances, a woman who sacrificed career for family, now facing the job market with decades-old skills and an age that makes employers hesitate. "I don't know who I am anymore," she whispers. "I was somebody's wife, somebody's mother. But now, I'm just nobody." "Rosa," I say gently, "you're somebody who survived 3 decades, and is brave enough to start over. That's not nobody. That's a warrior. As the words leave my mouth, I realize I'm talking to myself as much as to her. Over the following weeks, I develop my rhythm at the mission. Each woman's story is unique, yet patterns emerge. Dreams deferred, voices silenced, potential buried under years of being told they don't matter. But I also see incredible strength, creativity, and wisdom that society discards simply because of age. At home, Jim barely acknowledges my new routine. Playing social worker is how he refers to my work. When I try to share stories about the women I'm helping, he changes the subject or leaves the room. The distance between us grows daily, like a chasm opening in the foundation of our marriage. But something is changing inside me. For the first time in decades, I feel truly alive. 3 months into my internship, I'm facilitating a support group when Maria, a 61-year-old former teacher, shares something that stops everyone cold. I discovered my principal was stealing federal funds meant for our low-income students, she says quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. When I reported it, he fired me and made sure I couldn't get hired anywhere else. Said I was a troublemaker, past my prime, who should mind her own business. The room, which moments before buzzed with quiet conversations, falls silent. 8 women lean forward, recognizing something in Maria's story that resonates with their own experiences. Rosa nods vigorously. My supervisor at the bank started giving all my major clients to younger representatives. When I complained, HR said I wasn't adapting to the changing demographic of their customer base. The room erupts with similar stories. Age discrimination masked as restructuring. Sexual harassment dismissed because who would believe an old woman? Workplace bullying that drove them to early retirement, depression, or worse. Patricia, a former nurse, describes being told she was too slow for modern healthcare, despite 30 years of experience and countless lives saved. Each story builds on the last, creating a tapestry of systematic oppression that's been normalized, overlooked, and dismissed. These aren't isolated incidents. They're part of a pattern that affects millions of women who've reached an age where society deems them expendable. What if we did something about this? I ask impulsively, surprising myself with the conviction in my voice. The women look at me skeptically. Like what? Rosa asks. Who's going to listen to a bunch of old ladies? We're invisible, remember? But I can see something flickering in their eyes, not just hope, but anger. Righteous anger at a system that wastes their experience, dismisses their contributions, and treats them like they're past their expiration date. That night, I can't sleep. I research employment law, age discrimination cases, and advocacy organizations, until my eyes burn from staring at the computer screen. Statistics pour across my screen. Women over 50 face unemployment rates twice as high as younger counterparts, stay unemployed longer, and when they do find work, earn significantly less than before their job loss. By morning, I have a plan forming. Not just for support, for action. I call my son Michael, a lawyer in Chicago. We haven't spoken since graduation day, and his voice is cool when he answers. Mom, what's this about? He says impatiently. I can hear his office in the background, phones ringing, keyboards clicking, the sound of important people doing important work. I need legal advice about starting an advocacy group for older women facing workplace discrimination. Silence. Then, Mom, maybe you should focus on enjoying retirement instead of stirring up trouble. You've got your degree now. Isn't that enough? Michael, I'm helping women who've been silenced and dismissed. If fighting for justice is trouble, then I'm proud to stir it. After hanging up, I draft a proposal. Gray Power Legal Advocacy. A program connecting older women with pro bono lawyers while documenting patterns of age discrimination. I work on it for hours, drawing on everything I learned in my research methods classes, structuring arguments the way my professors taught me. I present it to Lisa the next day, my hands shaking slightly as I slide the folder across her desk. Margaret, "This is ambitious," she says, reading my proposal carefully, "and brilliant, but it could make powerful people uncomfortable. Are you prepared for that kind of fight?" "Good," I reply. "Comfortable people don't change systems." A week later, Lisa calls me into her office with news that will change everything. A national foundation wants to fund my advocacy program. They're offering $200,000 to launch Gray Power across 5 cities. I sit in my car afterward, hands shaking. At 68, after being laughed at and dismissed, I'm about to become the director of a nationally funded social justice initiative. But first, I need to have some difficult conversations at home. Subscribe and hit that like button if you're enjoying Maggie's transformation. You won't believe what happens when she finally confronts her family about years of being overlooked and undervalued. The next chapter will shock you. That evening, I cooked Jim's favorite dinner, pot roast with mashed potatoes, and wait for him to come home from his construction job. The familiar ritual of preparing his meal feels different now, tinged with the knowledge that this might be one of the last times I perform this decades-old routine. When he walks through the door, complaining about his back and demanding a beer, I take a deep breath and prepare for a conversation that's been building for months. "Jim, we need to talk. Can it wait? I'm exhausted. Johnson's been riding us all week about this project deadline, and my crew's falling behind." "No, it can't." I turn off the TV and sit across from him at our kitchen table, the same table where I've served thousands of meals, helped children with homework, and sat alone with my textbooks while he watched sports. I've been offered a position directing a national advocacy program. It means travel, speaking engagements, and significant responsibility. He laughs, that dismissive sound I've heard too many times, the one that makes me feel small and foolish. "Maggie, you're almost 70, don't you? Think this social worker fantasy has gone far enough? You got your degree, had your little moment. Isn't it time to come back to reality? It's not a fantasy, and I'm 68, not almost 70. The correction matters to me, though I know it sounds petty. Every year feels precious now. Every opportunity, fleeting, whatever. Look, I've been patient with your little midlife crisis, but this is getting ridiculous. You belong here, taking care of our home, maybe helping with grandkids when they visit. That's what wives do." The phrase, "little midlife crisis," hits me like a slap. 20 years of education, reduced to a phase he's been tolerating. The patronizing tone, the assumption that my place is defined by his comfort. It's everything wrong with our marriage condensed into one dismissive comment. Something snaps inside me. When was the last time our grandkids visited Jim? When was the last time any of our children called just to see how I'm doing? When did you last ask about my day, my thoughts, my dreams? That's different. No, it's not. For 43 years, I've made myself smaller so everyone else could feel bigger. I've silenced my dreams so others could chase theirs. I've been the supportive wife, the devoted mother, the good woman who never asks for too much. But I'm done. Jim's face darkens. His jaw setting in the stubborn way I know means he's preparing for a fight. "If you take this job, don't expect me to support you. I won't be dragged around the country while you play activist. And don't expect me to be here when it all falls apart and you come crawling back. The threat is meant to control me, to make me choose between my marriage and my purpose. For 43 years, it would have worked. The old Maggie would have apologized, backed down, returned to her small, safe world. Then don't be, I say, quietly, and the words feel like stepping off a cliff into free fall. The next morning, while Jim is at work, I pack a suitcase. Not everything, just enough for now. I move through our house like a ghost, touching objects that represent a life I'm leaving behind. Our wedding china, never used. Photo albums documenting a family that grew apart. Furniture we bought together, but that reflects only his preferences. I leave a note explaining that I'm accepting the position and moving to a furnished apartment near the mission. I don't ask for his understanding anymore. I simply inform him of my decision. The note is businesslike, devoid of emotion. A skill I learned from my social work training. My phone rings all day. First Jim, angry and threatening. "You'll regret this, Maggie. You'll be back within a month, begging me to take you back." Then my children, each calling to tell me I'm being selfish, unreasonable, embarrassing. "Mom, what will people think?" Sarah asks, her voice high with anxiety. "Dad called crying. How could you do this to him?" "Dad says you've lost your mind," Michael adds coldly. "He's talking about having you evaluated for dementia. Maybe that's not a bad idea." Only David, my youngest, asks a different question. "Mom, are you happy?" "For the first time in decades, yes," I tell him. "Then maybe that's what matters," he says softly. That night, in my small but bright apartment, I sit at my new desk and begin writing my acceptance letter. Outside my window, Denver's skyline twinkles with possibility, and I feel like I'm seeing the city and my life clearly for the first time. At 68, I'm finally becoming who I was meant to be. 6 months later, I'm standing at a podium in Washington, D.C., addressing a Senate subcommittee on aging. The mahogany-paneled room intimidates most people, but I feel strangely at home here, advocating for the invisible women society has forgotten. The hearing room is packed with observers, advocates, journalists, policy wonks, and women who've traveled from across the country to witness this moment. Some are wearing purple scarves, the unofficial symbol of the gray power movement that's grown far beyond what I ever imagined when I first drafted that proposal in my tiny apartment. Senators, age discrimination doesn't just hurt individual women. It wastes our nation's most experienced talent, I testify, my voice steady despite the cameras recording every word. When we force women into premature retirement or unemployability, we lose decades of wisdom, skill, and institutional knowledge that can't be replaced by enthusiasm alone. Behind me sit 5 women whose cases Gray Power Legal Advocacy has taken on. Maria, the teacher who exposed corruption and is now consulting with the Department of Education on financial oversight. Patricia, the nurse forced out at 58 and told she was too slow for modern healthcare, who now trains emergency response teams. Janet, an engineer whose ideas were stolen by younger male colleagues who then claimed she was past her innovation years. Each represents hundreds of women we've helped, but also thousands more still fighting for recognition and respect. Senator Williams, a woman in her 60s herself, leans forward with obvious interest. "Ms. Thompson, what's been the most surprising aspect of your work?" "The magnitude of the problem, Senator. In our first 6 months, we've documented over 800 cases of age discrimination against women over 50 across 5 cities. But also surprising is the incredible talent we're uncovering. These women aren't winding down, they're gearing up. They have decades of experience that younger workers simply can't match, combined with the wisdom that comes from navigating life's challenges." I pause, looking directly at each senator. We've helped women launch successful businesses, return to careers they were forced to abandon, and fight discriminatory practices in court. The return on investment isn't just personal, it's economic. When we waste the talents of experienced women, we all lose. Senator Martinez, a Republican from Texas, asks, "But Ms. Thompson, don't you think there are natural limits to what people can accomplish at certain ages? Isn't there value in stepping aside to make room for younger workers?" The question is loaded, reflecting the exact attitudes we're fighting. But I'm prepared. Senator, if we applied that logic to this room, half of you would be forced to resign based on age rather than effectiveness. Experience doesn't diminish capacity, it enhances it. The question isn't whether older women can contribute, but whether we're smart enough as a society to utilize their contributions. A murmur of approval ripples through the gallery. After my testimony, reporters swarm me in the hallway. Questions fly about my background, my late start in advocacy, my personal story. Ms. Thompson, you started this work at 68 after your own family didn't attend your graduation. Do you see this as revenge? No, I answer calmly. I see it as justice. Not revenge against individuals, but justice for a system that discards people, based on age and gender rather than ability and passion. That evening, in my DC hotel room, I video call with Rosa, who's now managing the Denver office while I travel. Her transformation has been remarkable, from a woman who felt invisible to a confident advocate leading workshops and training sessions. Maggie, you won't believe what happened today, she says excitedly. Remember Patricia, the nurse? She just got hired at Children's Hospital. They specifically wanted someone with her experience level. And Maria? She's consulting with the Department of Education on financial oversight policies. Tears fill my eyes. This is what victory looks like. Not personal vindication, but systemic change that opens doors for others. My phone buzzes with a text from David. Mom, saw you on the news. I'm proud of you. Dad is too, though he won't admit it. Perhaps the most profound change isn't in the laws we're fighting to change, but in the families learning to see their mothers, grandmothers, and wives as full human beings with dreams worth pursuing. A year after that Senate hearing, Gray Power legal advocacy has expanded to 12 cities and helped over 2,000 women. The movement has taken on a life of its own, with local chapters forming organically across the country. Women are sharing their stories, supporting each other, and refusing to be invisible anymore. I'm preparing for our national conference when I receive an unexpected call that changes everything. Mom, it's Sarah. I need to apologize. I set down my conference notes and focus completely on my daughter's voice. There's something different in her tone. Vulnerability I haven't heard in years. I've been watching your interviews, reading about your work. I realized something terrible. I became exactly like Dad. I dismissed your dreams because they made me uncomfortable. Tears prick my eyes. Sarah. No, let me finish. Do you remember when I was 8 and wanted to be an astronaut? You never once told me I was too young or that girls couldn't do that. You bought me books about space, took me to planetariums, encouraged every crazy dream I had. I do remember. I remember all their dreams, all their hopes, how carefully I nurtured them while suppressing my own. But when you had dreams at 68, I laughed. I'm so ashamed, Mom. You raised me to believe women could do anything, and then I turned around and told you that you couldn't. I became part of the system that silences women. We talk for 2 hours. Sarah tells me about her own struggles with feeling invisible in her marriage, how watching my transformation inspired her to start counseling and pursue the photography career she'd abandoned when she became a mother. She's been documenting the Gray Power movement, creating a visual narrative of women reclaiming their power. I want to bring the girls to your conference, she says. I want them to see their grandmother changing the world. I want them to understand that women don't have expiration dates on their dreams. The conference exceeds every expectation. Women fly in from across the country, some to share their stories, others to learn advocacy skills, many simply to be in a room where their age is seen as an asset rather than a liability. The Denver Convention Center buzzes with energy as 1,500 attendees network, attend workshops, and celebrate victories both personal and collective. The keynote speaker is Dr. Gloria Martinez, a 75-year-old federal judge who became the first Latina appointed to the Supreme Court. She finds me afterward, her security detail giving us space to talk privately. Margaret, your work is creating ripples across the legal community. Law schools are adding courses on age discrimination because of the cases you've documented. You're changing how we think about career longevity and the value of experience. But the moment that matters most comes during our final panel. A 55-year-old woman stands up in the audience, her voice trembling with emotion. Ms. Thompson, I was fired last year and told I should enjoy retirement. Because of your program, I not only fought my termination successfully, but I started my own consulting firm. I'm busier and happier than ever. You didn't just help me find work, you helped me find myself." The standing ovation lasts 5 minutes. Looking out at hundreds of women who refuse to be invisible anymore, I think about that lonely graduation day that started it all. The empty chairs that broke my heart have led to this room full of women supporting each other, refusing to be silenced. In the back of the auditorium, I spot a familiar figure. Jim sits quietly, almost hidden behind a pillar. Our eyes meet across the crowded room, and he nods slightly. Not approval exactly, but acknowledgement. Recognition that the woman on stage is someone he never knew was inside the wife he took for granted. Subscribe and like if Maggie's journey is inspiring you. The final chapter will show you the incredible full-circle moment that proves it's never too late to rewrite your story. 2 years later, I stand once again in an auditorium, but this time, everything is different. The University of Denver is awarding me an honorary doctorate in recognition of my advocacy work. The same building where I sat alone at my graduation is now packed with people celebrating my achievements. The transformation is stunning. Where once empty chairs mocked my solitude, now every seat is filled. The local news crews set up cameras to document the ceremony. The university's banner reads, "Honoring Dr. Margaret Thompson, Champion of Social Justice and Lifelong Learning." In the front row sit my 3 children and 6 grandchildren. Sarah holds a professional camera, documenting every moment for a photography exhibit about the Grey Power movement. Michael, who now handles legal cases for Grey Power pro bono, beams with pride. His firm has made our work a cornerstone of their pro bono practice, earning national recognition for their commitment to age discrimination cases. David has brought his teenage daughter Emma, who's applying to social work programs because "I want to change the world like Grandma Maggie." She wears a Grey Power t-shirt and has started a club at her high school focused on intergenerational mentorship. But the site that moves me most is the section reserved for Grey Power women. Rosa, now national coordinator, wipes away tears. Maria waves enthusiastically, wearing the purple scarf that's become our movement's symbol. Patricia holds a sign reading, "Grey Power Changes Lives." Hundreds of women whose voices were once silenced now fill the auditorium with their cheers. The audience represents more than personal support. It's evidence of a movement that's changed thousands of lives. Grey Power now operates in 25 cities, has helped over 5,000 women, and has influenced policy changes in 12 states. We've proven that experience isn't obsolete. It's invaluable. Even Jim is here, sitting quietly in the back with his new girlfriend, a woman his age who seems to appreciate him in ways I never could. We're divorced now, an amicable split once. He realized I wasn't coming back, but he came to witness this moment. After the ceremony, he approaches me hesitantly. "Maggie, I was wrong," he says simply. "I spent 43 years trying to keep you small, and you were meant to be enormous. I'm sorry it took me so long to see it. It's the apology I never expected, but somehow needed to hear. Not for reconciliation, but for closure." As I walk across the stage to receive my honorary degree, I think about the woman who sat alone here 4 years ago, convinced her story was ending. The applause thunders around me, but what I hear most clearly is the voice of every woman who believed she was too old, too late, too invisible to matter. The university president, Dr. Jennifer Walsh, introduces me. Dr. Thompson exemplifies our belief that education transforms not just individuals, but society itself. At an age when many consider retirement, she launched a movement that has changed how America views aging, gender, and the value of experience. In my acceptance speech, I look out at the sea of faces, young and old, hopeful and determined, representing every demographic that society tries to marginalize. 4 years ago, I graduated alone from this very stage. I thought that loneliness was my ending, but it was actually my beginning. Every woman who feels invisible, every person who thinks they've missed their chance, your story isn't over. Sometimes our greatest chapters begin when everyone else thinks the book should close. I pause, seeing tears in the audience, hands raised in solidarity. At 68, I learned that graduation isn't an ending. It's permission to become who you were always meant to be. Age isn't a limitation. It's liberation from caring what others think. Gray hair isn't surrender. It's our battle flag. And loneliness isn't failure. Sometimes it's the space we need to discover our own strength. The standing ovation continues for 7 minutes. Gray power women throughout the audience hold up signs. Never too late, invisible no more, gray and proud. Young people join in, having learned that supporting older women's rights benefits everyone. Later, at the reception, my granddaughter Emma pulls me aside. At 16, she's already showing the fierce independence I wish I'd claimed decades earlier. Grandma, I used to be embarrassed when you talked about starting over so late in life. But now I understand. You didn't start late. You started exactly when you were ready. And you've taught me that being ready doesn't depend on age. It depends on courage. That night, I returned to my apartment, no longer temporary, but home. The walls are covered with photos from Gray Power events, letters from women we've helped, news clippings about policy changes we've influenced, and my diplomas, both the original and the honorary doctorate. On my desk sits tomorrow's schedule. A meeting with the governor about expanding our legal advocacy program, a conference call with chapters in 3 new cities, and an interview with a documentary filmmaker who's creating a film about ageism in America. At 72, I'm not winding down. I'm just getting started. My phone buzzes with a message from a 65-year-old woman in Seattle. Ms. Thompson, I just left my job to start a nonprofit for homeless veterans. Your story gave me courage. Thank you for showing us that reinvention has no expiration date. I smile, pour myself tea, and begin planning tomorrow's work. After all, there are still women out there who think they're invisible, still battles to fight, still systems to change, and I intend to help them discover they shine brighter than they ever imagined possible. Because sometimes the most beautiful chapters of our lives begin when everyone else thinks the story should be over. Sometimes 68 is just the beginning, and sometimes the greatest gift we can give the world is refusing to disappear when they expect us to fade away.